Welcome back, Cracked fans, to another edition of the Cracked Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. We're sticking with a college tennis theme on today's show, and while today's guest is not the head coach of one of our Cracked Racquets preseason top 11 men's teams heading into this season, he and his team are certain to play a big part of this 2021 year. Of course, I am talking about NC State head coach Kyle Spencer and his Wolfpack team. All of us during this ITA kickoff weekend draft were wondering who was going to be the first team to go to NC State. We all anticipated that would be one of the toughest regions to advance out of throughout the country, and that's exactly how it played out. Stanford, Tennessee, Ole Miss, all elected to make the trip to Raleigh, and of course it was great to get to chat with Coach Spencer about his immediate reactions to the teams he will be hosting on kickoff weekend. We also of course talk about his team heading into this 2021 season. How do they recapture the momentum they clearly had last year? How do they leverage the fact that they bring back everyone to a team that was top 15, certainly top 10 as they're hosting a region during the 2020 season? Of course, we also ask what it's like to have a guy who's clearly going to be playing pro tennis in Alexi Galarneau at the top of the lineup. We ask him about the necessities of recruiting internationally, just given how talented the college tennis game has become. And then, of course, we had to have a little bit of fun. Coach Spencer is adamant that the 1998 Stanford men's tennis team is the best college tennis team of all time. He makes a very definitive case for that team. I think all of you college tennis historians like myself are really going to enjoy that at the end of the podcast. But it's a really great conversation. Coach Spencer's so candid. It was great to get him on the show. Before we get to that interview, quick reminder for all of you fans out there, and you know the message already, but look good, feel good, play good. Midwest Sports, Aero Bar, Cracked Racquets, Midwest Sports and Aero Bar, the life for us that makes this podcast and all these interviews possible. So please go support them. MidwestSports.com, the promo code is CR15. AeroBar.com, the promo code is Cracked30. But with that in mind, let's get to our conversation with NC State Wolfpack head coach Kyle Spencer. Joining us on the podcast today, a returning guest here on our Cracked Racquet shows, and it's not often that we have a guest twice in the same week, but that is the quality of the guest we bring to you today. Of course, you may know him as the head coach of the NC State men's tennis team. You may also know him as a former Olympic tennis player. Kyle Spencer, welcome to the Cracked Interviews podcast. It is a pleasure to have you back on the show. 3 days later, the draft is in the books. How are you feeling? I imagine a little bit that post-draft hangover?
Yeah, no, it was great. It's so funny, just with the timing. You're used to having it in the summer, and you have a million things kind of going on, and we still have a million things going on, but just a completely different landscape of when the draft was. So yeah, it was fantastic. I watched the whole thing and had my assistant Chris on the other line, kind of giving some commentary as well of what he thought was going to happen or why things were happening, and it was great.
Yeah, you had your Chris on the line. I had my Chris on the line as well. It was a very, very fun draft, certainly. And yeah, it was interesting. So I think that's the place we have to start. And obviously, we want to talk about your team. We want to talk about your tenure at NC State and your coaching career as well. But let's start with your response to the kickoff weekend draft. You end up, I believe, it's going to be Stanford, Tennessee, and Ole Miss coming to Raleigh for your region. Stanford with the first pick. I don't want to say surprises everyone because I did get a little bit of intel right before the draft started, but certainly it was a big question. Would they be able to travel? And if so, Texas, NC State, Michigan, all were in play. You find out the Cardinal is heading over to Raleigh. What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, obviously, I think I was genuinely surprised, but hindsight's fantastic. So you go back and you go, oh, okay, well, this is a team that beat us first round of the or whatever, the round of 16 at the national indoors last year. They bring the two best recruits probably in the country in. They see that we didn't bring anybody in, so they think, oh, this is a good opportunity. So it makes perfect sense. Obviously, I've known Paul since Paul Goldstein, the head coach, since he was since we were both 14. We were the same year in the juniors. So we played all the way in the juniors and played all the way up to through college. I was at USC, he was at Stanford, and then a little bit in the pros. So, yeah, I mean, it's I have a really good relationship with him, so I actually sent him a text right away just to say how excited we were to have them. And it's a very tough regional. You know, we play Tennessee every year anyway, and we've played. So we played my first year here at NC State. We played them at their place, then they came back to our place, and then we actually ended up playing them in the NCAA tournament because they were a host. And so, and then Ole Miss, Toby Hansen, who I've known for many, many years, has SMU ties. He played there. I was an assistant coach there. So, yeah, very familiar with sort of all the head coaches that are be coming to the Raleigh regional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's still very, very cool, of course, to say that Raleigh Regional. It's got to be awesome for you guys to host that. And again, your first match with Ole Miss, you look at the UTRs, it's pretty close across the board, but we know your team comes in with experience. You guys qualified for the national indoors last year. And, how valuable do you think that experience will be? Because, yeah, you play a Stanford team that brings back a bunch of guys, as you mentioned, but predominantly could be a very, very young lineup. Tennessee, Ole Miss, they've got depth and returners as well. But how are you feeling ultimately with how your region shake out? How do you feel about your guys heading into that one?
Yeah, I feel good. I mean, I think every head coach is, going to have some trepidation at the beginning of the season, not knowing sort of how much guys have played over the break and sort of how the protocols will go in. But in terms of the level, I mean, they're very comfortable. I remember last year going into even just the kickoff, I think we were 6 or 7-0 and played almost, I think, 6 matches on the road. And so we were really prepared. And I think, that's one of the things I tried to do as a head coach is to make sure the guys feel prepared. And so coming into this year with no new guys, we're not having to worry about, do they know what the level's like? Do they know what the environment's like? So in that regard, it's comforting. But look, it's a brutal regional and to be quite honest, I don't think we'd have it any other way. I think I mentioned to you before, one of my big things is we'll go to, if we're on the road, in the kickoff, we go to a really tough regional because I really believe if you're good, you're going to get out of it. And if you're not good, you do not want to be in the national indoor team finals because it's a brutal tournament as well. So, but we're excited. We're excited for the challenge, and to be hosting for the first time ever is a big deal. And credit to the guys for at least half a season getting us in that position.
Yeah, so you look at that first match, Coach, and obviously you're going to get to face up with Ole Miss, and Toby. How much do you know about that current team? I don't think you guys have run across each other, the players, if you will, in the last couple of years. So what do you know about them, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I know a little bit about their team. My last year at SMU, we were at A&M, and we played Mississippi first round of the kickoff. We know San Callan pretty well. I've watched some of their matches actually on live stream, getting ready for national indoor last year, just to see sort of who we might be playing. But yeah, we'll do a deeper dive as we get into it. I know they added a couple players. Not sure yet who's the impact, if they're both impact players or not, but for sure, I mean, look, you play in the SEC, you play in the ACC. These are the type of matches that we'd love to be able to schedule, and if we can't schedule, we'd love to get them in a national tournament like this. So, and a lot of it, as you guys know, comes sort of how the preparation is, but then also sort of the performance on the day. And I think that will be, what everybody is hoping for, is that you get the performance that you want out of the team, and to be quite honest, out of their team as well, because that's what we want. We want a great match.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing. I'm hoping. Do you have a live stream on the indoor courts there?
Yeah, we'll have live stream. So that's not an issue. But funny enough, the women are playing outside. We're playing inside. So it'll just be a fun weekend around here at NC State. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because Ole Miss is a pretty rowdy bunch of guys. You've got the forecourt indoor facility. Definitely look forward to getting through that doubles. You gotta like your chances with Lexi up top, and then it comes down to assuming that it doesn't swing 4-1 at best in either direction. 5 and 6, or at least 5 get on. And last year you had, what you have talked about this, you had some growing pains early, but had some young guys. They've got a year of experience now. I mean, you got to feel good about that kind of setup, that you're a lot more used to playing that 4 up first and then 5 and 6 get on later than maybe some other teams are.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, look, I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have the 6 and ready to go, but yeah, we've got the 4, and yeah, there is we're pretty got the routine down on what the guys that are playing 5 and 6 do in between, and so that won't be an issue for us. I think the guys that'll be playing 5 and 6 will be comfortable in that sort of dynamic, because oftentimes, it comes down to them, and what started sort of 2.5, 3 hours before actually comes down, and you got another 2 hours to go before the thing finishes. We haven't had too many of those, but we've had a couple in my time here that have got to the 4.5, 5 hour mark. Notably, our match with Texas and Virginia in year 1 and 2, I think we had a kind of a two pretty huge battles. But yeah, we don't play much in here. I will say that most of the time by middle of February, after the indoors were outside, and we don't mind that either. But we're definitely ready. We're used to it. We're used to the situation, and I do think it'll be a really fun weekend here.
Out of curiosity, I find it interesting. I'm used to a little bit to those forecourt facilities. Kentucky's got a forecourt indoor facility. And I'm curious, when you look at, especially at a team like you've got, where you hope and expect that, in many matches, you win doubles, you get a win out of Lexi, there's 2. After that, if you had a clutch guy that is say a 4, 5, 6 guy, do you rather see that guy at 4 and try to put 3 points up quick, or do you try to hold him out for 5, 6 because that's the pressure pack match at the end, and you'd rather hold somebody that can handle that pressure at the end of the day?
By the way, real quick, pressure pack, Wolfpack. Hey, great shot to you, Chris. Anyway, sorry, Coach.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways you can go with it. I think momentum, as every coach will tell you, is a big deal in our sport, and so you never know on the day how certain guys will handle things. I feel like the guys, whether they're coming in at the 5, 6 or they're coming in at the 1, 2, 3, 4 to start the match, if they focus on sort of themselves and realize that, like, it still takes 4 points to get a win for the team, and your point, whether you're the clincher or you're off first, they're not more important. Every match is important. Even guys that lose a tough 3-set match or something like that, that was still important that they were out there for 2.5 hours or something, as opposed to the momentum of having a quick loss or a quick win. I mean, that can really change matches. And I think the forecourt situation, if you're 5 and 6 going on, you've never played in that sort of environment. Some guys thrive in it, as you see guys get on a roll. They win last match on, like Styler at Michigan got on a roll with being that last guy on and enjoying the pressure. And some guys crater, and they don't like it. And that's, some of those things are not permanent either. One time the guy might love it because he loves the guy that he's playing against, and another one, I'm not, maybe we're a huge favorite, and you don't want to be losing, to an underdog, and so the pressure feels much greater. I mean, it's hard to know.
No, yeah, absolutely. And again, we look so much forward to seeing these teams coming out to Raleigh. I'm going to put it at a 3% chance I end up making the drive. I don't know if you guys are going to end up having fans. I'm kind of throwing floater out there to all of the coaches like, hey, if you'll have fans, if you'll have one member of the media, let me be the guy, because I'm happy to, I'm happy to sell my services. But even, beyond the national indoors, which I'm sure we'll get back to at the end when we talk about your team, your expectations for this season, I want to now talk about your tenure as head coach for NC State, because you look at your team and the growth you guys have had really over the past 4 seasons. And that's where I want to start, because that's obviously when Alexis and so many of the guys you have now came into the school. And, your first season, or I guess the year before you came, they go under 500. And then your first year, you go 17-9. The next year, I believe you guys do pretty well. Once again, go 19-11. And then last season, you get off to the start. You have qualified for the national indoors. You beat Michigan. You beat Texas at home. I'm just curious, heading into this 2021 season, how are you feeling about the growth you've seen from your program?
Yeah, I think it's been wonderful. I think it's always, whenever you take over at a new program, I've done it twice, but also been an assistant 3 years. So there's always different intricacies, and you don't quite know what you have and where your advantages are and what you can do and what you can't do. So yeah, I think it's been, I was blessed coming in with what I thought, not knowing any of the guys, and hearing, different coaches say this or different coaches say that about the current team when I came in. I thought I was fortunate, and I had a bunch of guys that, hadn't won a lot, but wanted to work hard and enjoyed tennis, which I think is a big deal. And, maybe we're just looking for a new vision or a sort of a new energy. And what I found was, we had everything that we needed. I mean, I didn't feel like we were lacking in anything. I knew that, obviously being at Maryland, the head coach, and I knew the conference, and half the coaches are still here when I was coaching at Maryland. And, I think one of the things that I'm lucky to be part of in my sort of playing and coaching history is I've been at, very good programs, USC, Baylor, SMU. I've worked with, Peter Smith, Carl Neufeld, Matt Knoll, all been part of national championships, and so I know what it looks like at the end, and what it's supposed to look like, and where you need to be super strong. And so in terms of developing a program, Maryland was, I got sort of cut my chops there. And so I kind of knew coming into NC State what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. And then, Chris James was our current assistant, was a huge recruit, in terms of getting the program started in the way we wanted to do things. So I'm happy. I love competing. I love the practice environment. We do things maybe a little bit different than the maybe traditional powerhouses that you're probably used to, but it works for us. And a lot of people say, what's the most important thing? So like, look, I'm here 300 days a year on the practice court, and so those 300 days affect my life, and so I want guys around that I want to enjoy this sport with. I like being on the practice court. I like coaching. I like putting in the hours, and I want the people around me to be similar in that regard as it relates to the sport of tennis. So, yeah, we're in a great spot. I think we're very fortunate here that we can attract the home and aways at the high level. We have a home and away with Texas, with Tennessee, with Michigan, with I'm trying to think of all the people we get to play, Baylor, all these different, high profile teams. And I think that's really important, and introducing the first year's team to that kind of talent. Well, they kind of knew already. They play in the ACC, but then just the idea, like, I don't think Chris or myself kind of care what our record is. We're not trying to go undefeated. We're not trying to pad the stats, so to speak. I think we want to be involved in great matches and and that goes back to our, sort of philosophy of we want each guy to be able to max out their tennis. And if that means getting to be a top 100 ATP pro, great. If that means an All-American, if that means going from a, sort of 4 or 5 star into being able to be a success at the Power 5 level, fantastic. We're not here to put a ceiling on any guy. And I think that's where you've kind of seen where, people talk about the process a lot, and that's kind of a buzzword. We're not result based, and we're not. But I do tell the guys, look, that process is always being evaluated, and so that's the fun part about coaching here. The administration is wonderful. They allow us to strive to be an elite program, and I think, starting with last year, I think you started to see the unearthing of what we can do here. So yeah, we're very, very excited.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And there's a lot of reason to be excited. And you sort of talk about your background weaved in there. You've coached in so many different great conferences. You've coached you've played in the Pac-10, now the Pac-12. You've coached in the Big 12. You obviously got to guide programs at Maryland, at SMU. And, now you're at NC State and a part of the ACC. And you just look at the past 10 years in men's college tennis. Obviously, Virginia from 2008 to 2017, that's as good of a 9-year run as you're going to find from any college program in college tennis history. And then, the next year it's Bresky who steals his first national title at Wake Forest. A lot of people, myself included, had North Carolina as the front runner to win the title last year. And I'm just, again, you have competed at various different levels, and you talk about the process. And whenever a coach says that, I love to say, well, let's dig into that process. I'm curious what it's like to compete in the ACC and what that means for, the level of play, the standard of excellence you have to have, because obviously if you're not good, you'll be exposed fairly quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody who, as a head coach or assistant coach comes into this conference, you can't be afraid of competition, and you have to, there's, like you talked about, the hegemon changes. You go from a UVA to a Wake to a UNC, but you start looking at the tournament teams. I mean, we're looking usually at 7, 8, 9 teams in the ACC that, and those matches. I mean, you look at like a Florida State. Florida State knocks off UNC when they're number 1. 2 years ago or whatever. You look at the NCAA final site, and you got the top 8, and you've got UNC, playing in the championship, playing in the semis. You got Wake playing in the final. You got UVA playing in the quarters, and you're like, oh, okay, where do we fit in? Well, every year is a little bit different, and you've got to be able. Obviously, the job is you got to be able to get good players to come here and get better, and guys need to love to be in, for lack of a better phrase, high pressure environment, high level tennis, and be able to thrive. And I think it's exciting. I mean, we played in the ACC semis our second year, for the first time, and to be quite honest, I thought we let one slip. We had the match points in the doubles, and things were kind of going our way. And Wake was I think they're in the national championship match that year, and we thought we should have won the match, or at least been in a last match on situation. I think the last match on situation would have been Alexi against Gojo for the match. Mm-hmm. We had a lead. We had a break up in the third at 5, and we just had some things that didn't quite go our way, but we were absolutely in that match. So the ACC is just a wonderful conference to play in. There's certain challenges you've got to go down. Sometimes on the road you play Miami and it's 100 degrees, and the week before you might have been playing Notre Dame and it was snowing and you're playing indoors. Or
Clemson. I feel like everyone struggles at Clemson.
Yes. It's just all these places are unique, and it's just really it's a fun experience for the guys. It's fun when these teams come in and play us here. But it's certainly competitive. And if you don't like to compete, this is not the conference for you.
You talk about that competition. What's just on the recruiting front? It's got to be. I mean, you're in an area obviously right there where you've got Duke, you've got North Carolina, not far away. You've got Wake Forest, schools that are traditionally really good tennis schools, and then you come in trying to build up that program a couple years ago. That's got to be a challenge to say the least, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Coach Paul at UNC has been there, I don't know, 40 years, 30 years, something like that. He's been there. He and Tripp have done a wonderful job and built it up over time. I can tell you, I mean, I don't want to sound like like an elitist or something, but some of these programs when I was at USC, I mean, when I played in the 90s, like North Carolina is not on the radar. I didn't know where Baylor was. There was like 4 teams that could win it. It was SC, UCLA, Stanford, and Georgia. That was it. And so that's what's so wonderful about our sport and how much it's grown with everybody and the coaching and the recruiting and just being everybody's got a shot if they have at least the resources to be able to put together a great program. And then the rest is just the history part. It's like you're not playing the ghosts of 2000 NCAA champions. You're playing the team that's been assembled this year. And so, yeah, you got to look out a little bit for this year, but the years coming as well in terms of recruitment. But I think one of the areas that we've had great success is we've been able to help our guys get better. Yeah, I think that's the reality. And I think in today's world, unless you are the ultimate recruiter, which we have some of those in our conference and for sure in the country, you're going to have to be able to develop talent and be able to figure out which guys fit into the way you like to do things and the way the programs run, because I think that is a big deal. And I think if you look at each program, at least in the ACC, you guys know this because you talk to all these coaches, but everyone's a little bit different. Everyone has their own style. Everyone goes about things a different way. So it is a big challenge, but at the same time, if you get the right guys in and they love to compete, then that's what it is. It's a challenge. And I don't think myself or Chris or Thomas, we have a volunteer, Thomas Mosier, who's been a head coach at the mid-major level for 10 years or whatever, and any of the players, I don't think they'd have it any other way. They'd love to compete, and whoever's in front of them, they're going to go out there with a great respect for their opponents and compete their butts off for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, and again, it's one of the staples of your team. Certainly, we saw the way they competed throughout the season. And I just want to stick with this topic for a second. And by the way, I don't know if he knows this yet, but if I eventually have someone I want to propose to become my wife, I'm going to have Tony Bruschi make the recruiting pitch, because I feel like there's no way it fails at that point, right? It's a guaranteed yes. But, to follow up on Chris's question, because you talk about, the difference in the talent in college tennis now versus maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's, there are so many different schools, and we've talked about it all season long. Schools 1 through 20 this season, the margins between them are so thin. It's going to be a deuce point here, a deuce point there that decides these matches. And so, of course, for all of these coaches, when you're competing with so many outstanding college coaches, and not to butter all of you up, but I really do think you look across the nation right now, there are as many good coaches in college tennis as there have ever been. And so, to Chris's point about recruiting, you can't just recruit Americans at this point. You have to look beyond that. You have to look internationally. And I think people who say, well, shouldn't American college sports be just for American students? I think that's really stupid, because to something you mentioned, to be the best, you have to beat the best, right? And as someone who came and played college tennis, not from the United States, I'm just curious if you could reflect on that experience, that perspective, and explain to the naysayers out there why it's better for college tennis to have international players as part of the sport as well.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, I grew up in Los Angeles, so but
yeah, that's foreign though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just look, it's a global sport, and the reality of what's happened if you just take it from the pro level, in men's tennis, the physicality is through the roof. It's a joke how strong the sport is. And so what's happened in what I believe is what's happened in our game is that we have now really have become a global pathway for developing and getting as good as you can in that formative stage. And I think a lot of people have changed their sort of outlook, whether it be at the federation level, the high junior level coaching, and realizing that the 18 to 22-year-olds need more of a finishing school, and the federation money is much more well spent with someone that's as close to finishing and being ready for the pro tour if they get on that track. And there aren't many avenues for that, and so when somebody says it's like, okay, this is a quote unquote a league, right? So high level Division I college tennis, if you look at it as a whole, there's a lot of places you can go to continue to improve your game. The added benefit is that you can get a degree and you can continue. You don't have to put all your eggs into one basket. And so that's attractive whether you live in Des Moines, Iowa, or India or France or wherever. That is people at 18 are going, what do I do? What do I do? I'm not good enough to go on the pro tour. I don't want to stop playing tennis. What's possible? And then as it relates to just a team with a global footprint, I mean, it's amazing. You get into these dinners, and you guys know this, but for the listeners, you get into these team dinners, and people, okay, what's your favorite food? And okay, how is that made? What's your favorite place in your hometown? How did you grow up? What was your training like? And you start talking about all these different, and wow, okay, and it makes for, if you're an American, it makes all of a sudden that introspective thought process stop, and you start going, okay, that's what that is like. Oh, that's what it's like in Japan. Oh, okay, wow. And whether they go on to play pro tennis, whether they go on to business or any other, whatever their job is, they now have a much more well-rounded view of the world and how things work and how to assimilate into more of a global environment. And I think those are the things when people talk about whether we should have international student athletes or not, I think some of those things are really lost. And I think those are things that are talked about at an administrative level. But if you look at college sports in general, I don't think you're going to have one coach saying no, that this is bad for us to have only American student athletes. Just like on every campus, you don't just have American students. So that's my 2 cents.
So, Coach, you alluded last time we talked to the fact that when Lexi showed up, he didn't have an ATP point, right? And that was one of the things that you guys were obviously very proud of, and he's come a long way. He won the Futures title back. I think that was in Fayetteville not long ago. He played. I remember seeing, I think last summer, between he and Ben and a couple of the other Canadians who do a really good job of taking care of their guys, got to play a whole bunch of challenger level matches. But he's really got to come from what I would assume was not a lot of big time tennis to now winning titles, playing challengers. Was that a big focus for him coming in? And what is that something that you're looking for in everybody, or it kind of depends by the player? But how's that gone for him?
Yeah, for him, I mean, look, I love talking about him just because he made a big jump, and it's something that a lot of guys in this college tennis system often don't do, and he came in, what people don't know is, he was a pretty good, he was about 100, ITF, but he was a year early. So he came, when he was just I think 17 and a half. So he had one more year in the juniors that he could have been playing. So him coming here a year early was an eye-opening, and he kind of, I think, me not being here was just kind of an adjustment. And then after his second year, our first year here, it was, look, you're good enough, but there's some things that you need to be doing a little bit different. He had been getting, these nagging kind of injuries, and part of it he wasn't as training, and he wasn't as fit as he could have been. His diet wasn't what it could have been. And he flipped the switch, and he said, okay, I'm going to do this as professional as I can. And I said, great, that's why we're here. We have, myself and Chris, we have this background to be able to get you on this track. These are the things you need to be doing. And the talent was always there. I mean, I walked in the door the first time I saw him hit a ball, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you can absolutely be a professional. And so, yeah, along the way, it's just been, he's been fortunate. Tennis Canada has provided a great summer, sort of challenger future circuit where, if you're one of the best guys, you get a lot of opportunities. And he took those opportunities. He had, the wins he's had are pretty remarkable. He beat Michael Moe. He beat Donald Young in Houston a couple weeks ago. You mentioned the future, but he backed that up with beating Mackie McDonald the next week, first round of the Challenger. So he beat Kayakowski. He's beaten 2 or 3 guys that have won the NCAA singles title. So this was the way we like to do things is just everybody's on that individual's team. So whether that be the federation coaches, the parents, the college coaches, the strength coach at home in the federation, we talk to everybody, and we help facilitate that process of just making sure everybody's on the same page. Everybody's, taking those details and going, okay, we're all clear on what this individual is trying to do, how to play, what needs to be improved, how we're going to do it, timelines, whether it be, playing box, training blocks, all those types of things. And, and then it comes down to the guys, how much do you want it? And what are you willing? And here's the tough one in college. What are you willing to sacrifice? And that's very difficult for a lot of guys. I mean, Alexa's a very good student as well. And so, I always think there's 3 things in college. There's your tennis, there's your school, getting your degree and that process, which alone is unbelievably tough. And then there's your social. Mm-hmm. And whether you're an elite athlete or you're a student that's not playing on any intercollegiate teams, I think to be really high level and great, I think you can do 2 of those things well. I don't think you can do 3 of those things well. And the guys that we've had that I've coached over the time have been able to focus on those 2 things. And he, to his credit, he did those things. But Chris, getting back to your point, yeah, I think we look in the recruiting process, for someone who loves to play tennis and loves to compete. But to be quite honest, we do look for guys that want to play on the pro tour. I think there's just a little bit an extra gear when you get guys into this environment that want to play pro tennis. It makes sense. We've got a challenger here that we get the wild cards to. We are able to schedule, whether it be college tournaments or pro tournaments. We're able to set schedules that make sense to us. And look, not everybody on our team is going to be a professional tennis player. But we're also not going to put a ceiling on a guy. If that's what you want, look, my background, and you guys probably don't know, but, I started tennis at 13, and 10 years later, I was lucky enough to, be in the Olympics, be in an ATP Tour final. And there's not one person who saw me play tennis at 13 years old that would have, said that that's possible. But tennis is a funny thing. If you work hard and you have some kind of innate trait that you can continue to evolve, then you've got a shot. And so that's what I bring, in the coaching. I keep that in my head all the time. Is there's nobody don't say no to anybody, because it's a funny game how things work out, and the levels of improvement. Some guys can do amazing things.
Yeah, one quick follow-up on that. You mentioned kind of some guys really, they all obviously have different aspirations. Some guys come in wanting to go pro. Some guys come in knowing, hey, I'm going to play college tennis and move on to the business world, whatever the case may be. But interested on your thoughts, and we've asked various coaches this question, for the guys who aspire to be professional tennis players. It's tough to only play 20 hours a week and then think that that's your career going forward. But right now you're stuck at, playing 20 hours a week. What are your thoughts on, the kind of NCAA limitations that these guys get, especially the ones who clearly have the aspirations and the talent to make that a career post-college?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question, and it's multi-layered. But to be quite honest, I think the 20-hour rule was put in for a lot of different reasons, and I in different sports and different situations and different. Look, we're playing Division I power. I would say Power 5 for the most part. High level. The guys that we're recruiting are super, super high level, super motivated. And yeah, that's really hard to say, like, hey, listen, we're at our 20 hours. Like, I can't work with you anymore. And we have to say it. And you get the guys know, look, I'm going to have to do more on my own. And make sure that and we're not talking, you're not talking about 35 hours, we're talking, we're maybe 25 or 28 or 30 or whatever it is on the certain week. But it is true. But also on the other side, it's, look, the pros come out and they come for a 3-hour practice, and you could have, the changeovers, and the breaks can be 20 minutes sometimes, and because they don't have a clock on them. And I will say the efficiency that we're able to work at is also different. But the reality is yeah, you want to be a high-level guy. You want to be a pro tennis player. Yeah, 20 hours is not enough, and you're going to have to do things on your own. And the great thing is, and I'm sure a lot of coaches would say this, the great thing is when you get a team like we have with guys that want to be pros, like, that's not hard. You're not going to be the only one looking around going, I don't have anybody to play with. That's not going to happen. So yeah, it's a challenge. I don't like it. I wish it was a voluntary thing. I get it. The NCAA, there's some coaches that have probably abused the voluntary thing where it's not voluntary, but at this level, look, it's guys want to play, guys want coaching. I find it hard to believe that we're not allowed to do that with them saying, I want this, so.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, if you are a tennis player who wants to develop and you go to a college because you appreciate the way that coach is going to help you develop, one would think it's counterintuitive to limit amount of time that student can play with that coach. I mean, certainly maybe limitations on the athlete demand or the coach's demand on the athletes, but if that athlete wants to come in his volunteer time and say, hey, give me an extra 2 hours, please, it is a little bit ridiculous. I agree that you as a coach can't just say yes. And that gets to some of the proposals. I have some changes for college tennis that I want to ask you about at the end of this, have a little bit of fun. But to get back to this 2021 season, because again, your NC State team, your host and your top 10 team heading into this year, we've talked about Alexei and obviously what he has meant to your team, but you look at the stats and, the recipe for success you guys found last season. And so often it was, steal the doubles point, usually at the number 1 and 2 positions, then get that number 1 singles win, get a win at 6 singles, and then really scrap, in that 2 through 5 spot, try and find one elsewhere. And, throwing even in the 6 singles conversation, throwing in guys, and you look across the board, obviously you bring back Martins, you bring back Robbie, you bring back really everyone, as you mentioned, from your lineup from last season. What have you seen from these guys in the off season? I don't know if you want to say your lineup already. Maybe, I'm sure you want to keep that close to the chest, but what have you seen from the guys in their development? Because obviously the better the depth in your lineup gets, the more chances you have to do some really fun stuff this season.
Yeah, I think, look, you've kind of highlighted some things in the interesting. I went through the. It's funny because I went through with the draft yesterday, and then the slam tennis is pretty easy to match up the teams, and you see the UTRs, and gosh, I feel like we're not favored against anybody in like the top like wow, you
The
know,
UTRs right now are ridiculous. They're just out of whack.
yeah, I mean, I see some things where I go, I know that guy's playing number one, and that guy's the fifth best guy on here. Like, well, what's going on? But yeah, look, I'm excited for our guys, and I love our guys. And you asked why, we go from the year before 66 to whatever we would have been last year. Hopefully a top 10 finish. I mean, nobody really knows, but the reality is the guys get better every year. And some things that you're working on might take a week. Some with an individual might take a month, might take a year. Some guys, you talk about the international sides, some guys adjust quicker, some guys don't. But yeah, I'm excited for sort of each and every guy. I mean, there's a battle for sure. There's a battle for the top 6 positions, and I tell the guys this, and it's for the most part true, we kind of start with a clean slate. We're not starting with Alexei with a clean slate. You can pencil him in right now, put it in pen, whatever. he will be playing number one. So, but the rest of the guys, it's their improvement, and as you guys know, it's not a straight line. It's not a diagonal line. It's a really jagged line. And that's been fun. The guys wouldn't hear. We had 2 guys that weren't able to come, that had to stay home, and so those things that we're up to date. Not daily, but for the most part, know exactly what's going on with them and how they've been able to practice and play and all of that. But it really comes down to we've got, as you say, we've got probably 7 guys apart from Alexei who we could put kind of anywhere, and I don't think it would be a stack. I think it would be just very competitive situation. Some of our guys are better outside, and some of our guys are better inside. So I think that is something. And so as the season progresses, you get some. If you asked me last year, outdoors, first match outdoors, we played Texas. That was our first match outdoors. And if you tell me that we're going to win the doubles, we're going to win at 1, I say, okay, yeah, I can see that. And then you're going to tell me we're going to win at 5 and 6 with our 6 and 7 players, because Turzak would have been playing 4 or 5 in that match, but he couldn't play. That's not what I would have picked. But these are 2 freshmen that were then on the sort of 9 months or 7 months of progress, 7 months of development. That look, they're the reason they're on a team. They're good players. But they're absolutely going to be better and better each year, I believe, the way that we go through and the way that we train and the way that we have this expression of, the practice is like practice court. This is our laboratory, and to go out and play tournaments, pro or college, UTR. Then we come back into the lab and we take all those findings and we go, okay, these are the things we need to have. And a lot of those things that we're working on is because they do want to be professionals. That's what we're trying to have them leave here with as many tools in the bag, or with the 2 big tools, usually serve and forehand, as close as they can be to being pro level. And that's sort of the, secret sauce. We're never going to bring in a guy and peg him and go like, look, you're a 5 guy and we're going to make you the best 5 guy in the country. We don't usually bring guys like that in. That doesn't get me up in the morning. And so I think that's where it's hard to know. It's hard to know what, a guy like, Izquierdo or Rafa is going to be able to do, or what a guy like Martins is going to be able to do, because he's a different player than he was 6 to 12 months ago. That's for sure. So yeah, I think that's sort of the the sort of, rub in terms of how do you think you're going to be? I don't know. I think 2 years ago when we went up to Michigan, I thought we could beat Michigan, and we didn't play a good match. And then you had Georgia and Baylor playing each other, and all of a sudden we're playing Georgia and we beat Georgia. And that's a program defining win, no matter if they're, the 12th best team or the 5th best team or the 18th best team, and then guys gain confidence from that. And then you bring that in again. And so I think each year, each team is a little bit different. And this more than ever is so wide open. Each match is so wide open purely and simply because you haven't had the time with them on the court. You haven't, in terms of the match court, you haven't been able to sit. Okay, SEC, Big 12 have had a couple opportunities, and so I would think that they would be in a great situation starting out compared to the rest of us, which haven't had that opportunity. But you never know. I think it's tough to know where you sit, and I just know this kickoff in our schedule. I think our schedule is phenomenal. The only match that we had to take off because we're not allowed to travel outside non-conference the region was Texas, and we were supposed to play Texas and Baylor on the road, and picked up Baylor to come here and change Texas out, and now we're playing Georgia. So after kickoff, we go down the next week and we play Georgia. Okay. It's one of those where, and by the time we get to the ACC, whatever that schedule is going to look like, we should be ready to go. But in the beginning, I think you're going to, just like we saw in the draft a little bit, I think you're going to see some scratchy matches. I think you're going to see the teams and the coaches that actually prepare really well are going to have an advantage. And but in the end, you get to March and April, if we're all allowed to play a decent schedule besides the Big Ten, I think you're going to see things kind of even out, and the teams that are supposed to be where they're supposed to be are going to be there.
Yeah, you brought up a couple of good points in there, Coach. One was with the fact that you had your freshmen playing 5 and 6, but they had 7 months of some experience under their belt, if you will. And I think for a lot of folks that don't follow college that closely, it's hard for them to understand how hard it is for these guys to get acclimated, especially the non-Americans that have never really seen college tennis. Maybe the American kids have seen it, even though they haven't been on the team, but the foreign guys that just haven't even seen what it's like to be in a college environment. And what makes it even harder, and especially this year, is these guys that are coming, that the freshmen that come in January.
Yep.
So if you've got a January commit that's never seen college, and now throw on top of it that they haven't even been with the team, which is going to make some of these regions interesting. So, for example, you got Arthur Ferry coming in for Stanford. He hasn't seen college. He hasn't seen Stanford. He's not there, right? It's going to be really interesting. Every team except yours in your region, I believe, will be playing freshmen. Johannes Monday is going to play for Tennessee near the top of the lineup. You're going to have Hallquist at Ole Miss. He's going to be in the lineup. You guys got 6 guys that know what they're doing. So, if there's anything there for you guys to kind of rest your laurels on, that's one of them. It's going to be definitely difficult for them. The other is, you mentioned the UTRs. I assure you, when you do your UTR comparison, Finn Reynolds will not be playing one for Ole Miss. That is not going to happen. So
Yep.
Unless Toby decides that he really wants Sankelin against Tadas or whoever's playing too, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think just that for sure the international, whether they've been here or not been here, like that you said, the team environment is just a different animal. I had Robin last year was great. We went to this match against Michigan, and he didn't get to play singles. And Marty got toughed out by Beatty at the 6 hole, which kind of started Beatty's kind of run. And he came up to me, and he didn't say it in a bad way. He said, "Coach, why am I not playing?" I said, look, this is just a big match, and I had to choose one of the two of you, but I really wanted you to see. I wanted you to be able to look from the stands and see what it looked like so that you can prepare yourself. And then he came in the next match against Northwestern and was lights out, no problem. So, yeah, there's a lot of those types of situations where, the first time, if there are crowds, the first time a crowd just goes nuts and a guy that's just off the boat. I think that might have happened to Styler a little bit in the beginning last year, where he is an unbelievable player and he showed how good he was. But first couple matches, and look, we had the same thing with Babelis when he came and Turzak when he came, and it's just a completely different animal. I think that's where the American guys do have a little bit better of an idea coming in as a freshman about what it's about, and they've seen a lot more matches and been involved in at least from watching what it's going to be like, But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think I speak for all the coaches. Fingers crossed that we're able to play and be able to do the things that we love. I think that to me is the winner here, and whatever happens this year happens, and then hopefully next year we get back to some normalcy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, we all look forward to the season starting. Well, then with that in mind, we want to have a little bit of fun with you down the home stretch here. Weave in some questions about your own personal history, and then, of course, just some other random rapid-fire questions. That sound good to you, Coach?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. Westoff, give me that rapid-fire sound effect. All right, let's start with a couple of questions about you. Let's start, you played your college tennis 95 through 98 at USC, and obviously USC, one of those historic programs that from, I believe, let's see, I'm doing the math here quickly in my head. I guess it would be, 1977 to 1997 had made the NCAA tournament stage every year. Until I think that 97 season when you guys ended up dropping that match to Fresno State. Sorry to bring it up. I see it on your face, but I have to imagine as someone who's awfully competitive, that was a match that stuck with you.
Oh, yeah. And funny enough, that was Peter Smith at Fresno State. And I can tell you the one image, for some reason, I don't know why, but it was a last match on situation, and I think he was sitting in the stands. Was that you? Oh, no. This was at this is a different match. This was at UNLV, actually.
Yeah.
So they used to have, this was an all-timer. So they used to have where, and I don't know I think it was per region, you could only have one host. I think this is right. You could only have one host. And in our region, UCLA was ranked ahead of us. So they shipped us out to UNLV. And so we were the 1 seed at UNLV. And if you ever played tennis in Las Vegas in May, or would have been May, it's hot, the balls fly, but they had a very good team. I mean, they did have a very good team. They had Robert Lindstedt at the one. They had Kelly Gullett. Those two guys made NCAA final of the doubles together. They had Eni Gdermic at the 3, who toughed me out in that match. But they just had a good team, and they played better than us that day, and that hurt a lot. And the big reason, not to mention just losing, but the NCAAs that year were at UCLA. So I can remember that was not good, and that wasn't a great feeling. I actually had one of my best individual results. I made the NCAA doubles final at UCLA, but poor Coach Leach had to take us over to UCLA every day for the starting from, I don't know, from the semis on. I don't even think he came for the practices before the individual started, because it was too painful to have the NCAAs in LA at UCLA, and we weren't in the top 16. So that was brutal. Yeah. And
I was going to ask, any solace in making the doubles final that year?
Yeah, for sure. From an individual level.
Because it was Luke Smith and Blink Iron who got you, right?
Yeah. So even more. I mean, just painful after painful. So that was when anybody who won the NCAAs got the wild card into the U.S. Open. So I don't know if you know this, but I lost the Kalamazoo doubles final to Humphreys and Goldstein, and that would have been a U.S. Open wild card, and then 4 years later got to lose the final of the NCAAs for the U.S. Open wild card. So that's just all daggers everywhere.
Well, we can move on, I suppose, from that one. All right, next question for you, because I pride myself as a college tennis historian. The 98 Stanford team, Goldstein up top, the Bryans, Alex Kim, future NCAA champion, I think was playing 6 singles. You've seen that team. You've seen, the other nominees. You can pick your Virginia squad. You can say, in my opinion, it was that 2012 USC team that's really, really good. But you think that 98 Stanford team is the best college team of all time?
It's not even close. It's not even close. And anybody, look, I love Peter's team with Stevie J.
Yannick Hanifman, who's a top 100 player at 5 singles, is pretty nuts.
It's not even close. I'm just telling you, it's not even close. You had Alex Kim playing the 6-hole. Not only did he win the NCAAs, I think like the next year out of college, he beat Kafelnikov first round of Australian Open.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a joke. It was a joke. Yeah, Mike and Bob Bryan, like we would play the matches and like, okay, they're 2 years. I think they're 2 years younger, and I'm playing I know I'm playing the 3-hole. They're playing the 1-hole in the doubles. Bob Bryan like won the Triple Crown. I think he won singles. I think he won
doubles and team. Yeah.
Team. I mean, and not to mention, I had to play you guys don't know my history, but I started tennis at 13, and my first like big tournaments in the 14s, I'm playing Bob and Mike Bryan, who are like 12 years old. They're like 5'1", and I'm not getting a game. I'm not getting a game against these guys. Yeah, they were phenomenal. It was just it was a no contest. Every match was a no contest. And I mean, this rotating of the ones is just absurd. I got Goldstein 50 in the world playing at 4. And he's just like, what's going on? And
Goldstein gave us that story. Yeah.
The understated guy is like Walters. I mean, Walters is like number 1 in the country. I think he's 1 year below me and Paul in the juniors. I mean, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. They rolled in. They're talking about how many points they've lost. I mean, for the season. I mean, sorry. I mean, I had to live it. Don't forget, I had to live it. We got Stanford one time in my 4 years at home, but it was a joke. I mean, it was a phenomenal team. They should be celebrated. They should be put on the Mount Rushmore. And everybody else. Look, I wasn't around in the 50s and 60s and, all of that kind of stuff. I know Coach Gould had some unbelievable teams, in the 70s and 80s. But yeah, I mean, to me, they're the best. And I was living it, and I've coached against, a lot of the other teams that came after. And to me, it's not close.
Yeah, I have yet to pester Coach Goldstein to this extent because we're just not there in our relationship. But doing some sort of podcast series, maybe a 2-part, 3-part, just getting to sit down with that 98 Stanford team. I think it was like 157-3 in individual flights or something crazy like that, which is like, yeah, as you mentioned, it's a joke. And who knows if we'll ever see anything like that in college tennis again. All right, in that spirit, again, you have seen, you've been in every year, I think. Maybe you missed a couple of 21st century college tennis. DeVarman, Stevie, Isner. You get one of them for the match. Who do you pick?
In college or in the pros?
In college. You get to pick one of them to play one for you.
I got to take Stevie.
Yeah, the Warrior.
I tell you why. Number one, he's a Trojan. But more importantly, I mean, like Isner, when Isner was playing, Kevin Anderson was playing. We had a guy, Pershka, I think he might have beaten both of them. There was still, John was great, but he wasn't what he is in the pros. He was very good in college, but he's an even better pro in my estimation. And Stevie's record, you can only play who they put in front of you, and he came up with the goods every single time.
Yeah,
every time. And look, the great thing about Stevie, the great thing about the Varman, the great thing about John Isner is they didn't come into college as those guys. Mm-hmm. They all got better, and so that's why I think it's pretty special that we can talk about those guys now.
Yeah. No, for me, the reason I fell in love with college tennis was Samdev Devarman. I mean, just watching him compete, tracking down every ball. The guy didn't overwhelm you with pace. He didn't do anything particularly special. It was just everything. It was a little bit of everything, and you got 110% of him in every match. And I'm sure it was a pain in the ass to compete against, but it was really, really fun to get to watch and see him play. All right, from there, let's go to some proposals I have to change college tennis. We're going to go goof around, some of them funny, some of them a little bit more serious. We can start with the serious one. All individuals in the fall, all team event in the spring. Would you be cool with that, or do you like it as is?
Yeah, I would be. I think that gives us our 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. It has a great culmination in the fall, and then it gets the team tournament specialized time, and there aren't. I think that gives us also flexibility of where the NCAAs can be held, how it can be held, and so I do. Yeah, I think it's both opportunities are marketable in their own right and should be. So yeah, I do like that.
Mm-hmm. In lieu of let's say you do that, let's say you put the NCAA championship, I don't know, maybe at the US Open during September. That could be a pretty cool thing to advertise college tennis. At the end of it, you do a college tennis Laver Cup. You get the best individuals, men and women across the country. It's a college tennis all-star game. Does Coach Spencer participate when I ask you to be the assistant on my team?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
We're serving and volleying, right?
Yeah, let's do it. Of course we're serving and volleying.
All right, that's what I needed to hear. Those are the critical questions. All right,
Gruskin, if it's you and Spencer, then I arguably get to play, and I of course am going to take former student and someone that beat Kyle in a challenger final down at USF, Ashley Fisher.
Oh yeah.
I'll take our chances. I think
you guys are bringing up all the hurts. That's Singapore. That's Singapore setting a break up. Ashley's a great friend of mine, and we went out on the tour after college together and played for about 3 months, and also had the opportunity to coach him a little bit once I was done playing and he was still playing. So. Yeah, that one. Yeah, you guys just bringing out the greatest hits right now.
No, the difference is the difference, coaches, between you and I and Chris and Ashley is that you and I are still mobile. We can still bend our knees. We can still move around the court a little bit. I think Ashley, I think Chris, they're past their primes.
I'm not falling into any of that bait. I don't want any piece of
good man, coach. Good
That's
man.
Smart. That's a long-time listener right there. All right, moving on to our next one. This is the Chris Halioris rule. Lawless lineup. So to incentivize home matches, to create even more of a home field advantage, the coach has to, the away coach submits their lineup beforehand. Then the home team coach gets to match up however they deem fit. It makes upsets on the road more likely. It just makes every match that much more competitive. Would you be in favor of the Halioris rule?
Not having this question ahead of time, my initial reaction would be no. And the reason is I think people want to see great tennis. And I think I think basically what you're weighing is the drama that might be there of the match versus the quality of the play, where there certainly would be drama anyway. So if you played, for instance, if you play a 4-3 match and every match finishes in 2 sets and the guy got it wrong, there's not much drama because you go down and the drama was when the lineup was turned over.
Yeah.
Because you go, okay, that's a win, that's a loss, that's a win, that's a loss, that's a win, and we win okay, it's over. So that's my initial reaction, but I can always be persuaded otherwise.
No, I think that's a good reaction. Chris, any follow-up?
I'm just trying to figure out how it got to be my like Gruskin starts, and he's now not only does he not own up to his own things, he's dumping his crazy ideas on me.
I love it.
No comment on that. All right, this one is a Gruskin rule, though. I am so anti-coin toss because I just think it is, when it's a college tennis environment, particularly around the doubles point, that first 45 minutes of a college tennis match, in my opinion, are the most electric 45 minutes in all of tennis. And so to get the crowd amped up even further, in lieu of having a coin toss, we have head coaches play one drop and hit point at the start of each match. Whichever coach wins that point ends up getting to decide who serves on each court. Or it incentivizes the coaches to keep in shape, to stay in action. And I would be I want to watch Steinberg versus Tucker 1 point. I'm there for that minute. Your thoughts, Coach Spencer?
I don't know. I'm gonna defer to the brain trust over there. You tell me.
Well,
wow.
There's no reason. You're telling me you have Alexi on the side.
Some of that.
Alexi's on the sideline, like, go wide, coach. Like, forehand wide, forehand down the line. You don't want that little interaction.
You talk about needing trainers and things like that. Achilles heels. I see all kinds of problems with that. You got some of these guys have got to drive a van. You know, I mean, they snap an Achilles, can't even drive the van home. You know?
It doesn't have to be singles, and we already have a commitment from the ACC, and it would fit here too, Gruskin. I'm seeing Spencer James versus Bresky Eaton. It's a doubles point. There it is.
Gosh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm in.
Put it this way, I'm a rule follower, so if the rule gets put in, I'll play. I mean, I'm used to playing. I'm just thinking about all the other guys that I could see wouldn't want that.
Yeah. We've heard, again, it's a mixed bag so far. Definitely a mixed bag.
You got some guys that might not be wanting to partake in that. I can see that ahead of time.
I'll bring it up at the coaches convention this week. Last two questions for you. I promised, one goofy, one serious. Again, this is another rule change. It's not exactly goofy, and there really is something to, you should finish a match on the court you start on. If a match starts outdoors, finish it outdoors, indoors. But as a college tennis fan, and in particular, you've been to the Varsity Tennis Center in Ann Arbor. It's 3 on one side, 3 on the other. If it's the 2 singles left and the 5 singles left, that creates a big conundrum, obviously, for us fans. So do you think it is more disruptive, or would you be in favor of, if at the end of matches it's 2 courts left, 3 courts left, you have them play next to each other, you have them move courts at a changeover so that the fans can congregate, the teams can congregate, the coaches can congregate. It just facilitates everything a little bit smoother.
Yeah, I guess you're talking only about probably the indoor situation. Where
mostly. Yeah, or outdoors, or Georgia, where it's like 1 on one side, 1 on the other, and you're like, it's on courts 1 and 6. That's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it's such a big. The purist would say that's nuts. The entertainer side of me says, that would be great. You want to keep the crowd together. You're not splitting it up, and that to me is that's not such a bad idea. The court is the court, you know. Mm-hmm. If all the courts are the same, I don't actually have an issue with it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, look, I get funky here. I just think about the ways I want to watch. All of these rule changes are for me. I said it was the Halioris rules.
I actually don't think that's true. I think you're like the general public, you're talking about something. Somebody walks into a stadium and they go, "What do I watch?"
Yeah.
There's number 5 is on one side and number 6 is on the other. Which one do I watch? Well, they're both, 1 all in the third. Uh-huh. I want to watch the one that comes down. Tell me who's going to finish. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's such a bad idea.
All right. Again, I'll bring it up at the convention. Well, that's my last question for you. You've been so kind with your time. For all of us college tennis fans out there who are going to watch the Wolfpack compete in 2021, what can we expect? What do you think a fan will take away from watching your team compete on court?
Yeah, I think if you're here in Raleigh and we get to have fans, you're going to see a great environment. but most importantly, you're going to see, a team, guys, at the end of the day, once we get together and we're playing a team match, you're going to see guys fighting hard. You're going to see a high level of play. We're definitely not going to over respect, an opponent. So that's because we don't think we can beat them, but we're definitely not going to undervalue anybody either. We're in it for the experience of each match. And we know that the highs and the lows come and go in that time frame of that, whatever it is, 2 hour, 2.5 hour, 3 hour endeavor. And you're going to see guys that are, out there having fun and trying to play a pretty high level of tennis. So we're super excited about the season, as I'm sure every coach is. And, it's we just can't wait to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I know I speak for all of us fans when I say it was such a pleasure to see your team get off to the start they did in 2020. We'll all be rooting for you to do exactly the same. Maybe you can cut out the win over Michigan, but, feel free to make up for that with a win over Stanford, TCU, UNC, whatever you got to do. But Coach Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Obviously, wishing your team safety and health throughout the rest of this offseason, and really look forward to seeing everyone and your guys back on the court in January.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate all that you guys are doing for college tennis, and hopefully this vehicle continues to get bigger and bigger, and we get more people involved, and so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I get a Go Pack from you?
Go Pack.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Take care.
Hope all of you enjoyed Chris and my conversation with NC State head coach Kyle Spencer. Should have said it in the intro, but at this point, fans, if you see it's a college tennis coach on the Cracked Interviews podcast, just assume Chris is going to be joining me. Shout out to him, as always, for his insight. It really is fun to get to play off of him. And, of course, a huge thank you to Coach Spencer for taking the time to chat with us twice in the past, 3-4 days. He was a part of our ITA kickoff mock draft, so that was really, really fun to get the chance to talk to him further in depth, and you can just tell how much he cares about college tennis. So certainly all of us here at Cracked Racquets is going to be rooting for the Wolfpack this season. It's going to be really, really fun to see how they do on kickoff weekend and throughout this 2021 year. Of course, there are so many great college tennis teams heading into this season to help get all of you fans ready. Our College Contender Series, if you have missed any of the action, we've talked to the coaches from number 11 Georgia, 10 Michigan, 9 Florida, 8 Stanford, 7 Texas A&M. Now this week, or last week I should say, it was number 6 TCU. We'll get to our number 5 team here this weekend. Obviously that we've done the Cracked Interviews podcast with those head coaches, Matt, Chris, and I talking about those teams at length on our Great Shot podcast. Matt writing about all of them for the website crackedrackets.com. So if you are a college tennis fan, we have you covered heading into this 2021 season. You can find all of that again on the website crackedrackets.com. Of course, if you want to find out what's going on in the pro tennis world, the Great Shot podcast, the mini break covering all of the day-to-day events, trying to figure out what 2021 is going to look like, when it's going to start. Again, you can find the links to those podcasts wherever you listen to your podcasts and on our website. And, of course, if you need those more immediate updates, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, we are at Cracked Racquets. You want to message me directly, I'm at Great Shot Pod. Shout out, as always, to our super producers, Max Fligner and Daniel Westoff, for the fuck of an editing job they do day in, day out. Shout out, of course, as well to our friends at Midwest Sports and Aero Bar. Go to MidwestSports.com, use the promo code CR15, go to aerobar.com, use the promo code CRACK30, perfect for your holiday shopping. Get your friends a little bit of tennis love, or show them, I suppose, a little bit of tennis love. Get them some tennis equipment, some tennis aero bars. Again, it'll make it for a very, very fun holiday season. But with that in mind, for my wonderful co-host Chris Halioris, our fantastic guest Kyle Spencer, our super producers Max Fligner and Daniel Westoff, our friends at Midwest Sports and Aero Bar, and all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host Alex Gruskin. You've been listening to another edition of the Cracked Interviews podcast. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.